webinar, which is about developing young people's skills through pre-apprenticeship programmes. My name is Nicola Aylward and I'm Head of Learning for Young People at Learning and Work Institute. Before we begin, just a couple of short housekeeping points to share with you. So if we could move on to the next slide, please, Shauna. Thank you. So firstly, if you could please ensure that your cameras are switched off and that your microphones are muted, that would be greatly appreciated. We have a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar, at which point I will invite people to ask questions. In addition, you're very welcome to post comments and questions in the chat box as we go through the webinar, and we'll pick these up during the Q&A session. Also, if we have time, we'll be having a short discussion session towards the end of the webinar. We'd like to focus the discussions around the two key questions that are shown on your screen now. So again, please post your thoughts and comments in the chat throughout the webinar. And as you can see, the key discussion questions are key learning from 2020. So a key learning point from your experiences of delivering programmes online. And the second area is around priorities for 2021. So if you'd like to share a key priority for your programme as we move into 2021, that would be great. Finally, we are recording today's session and we'll be making it available on our website along with the slides. So it's really great to have so many people with us this afternoon. This webinar is part of a wider project that L&W is delivering, which is focused around identifying and promoting effective pre-apprenticeship programmes. This project builds upon good practice from Europe, other parts of the world, including Australia and South America. We're really pleased to be able to run this webinar during EU Vocational Skills Week, which is a great opportunity for us to showcase the findings of our research and some of the providers who have contributed to it. I'll provide some background in just a moment, but before I do so, I'd just like to hand over to Louisa De Simone from JP Morgan, who have kindly supported us to undertake this work. So over to you, Louisa, please.
Thank you very much, Nicola, and thanks for the invite and for organizing this webinar. I'm very pleased to be here today on behalf of JP Morgan. It was a very different world when we originally designed this program, aiming to really collect evidence on effective pre-apprenticeship programs across Europe, providing digital skills and transversal skills, adopting blended learning approaches, and fostering learning to learn. Even before the crisis, the COVID crisis, the social and economic integration of young people was an ongoing challenge. Now, due to COVID-19, young people are even more likely to suffer severe and long-lasting impacts from the pandemic. Based on evidence collected by the International Labour Organization, the pandemic has been particularly hard on young women and younger youth, with young people across the globe concerned about the future and their place within it. So many trends have been accelerated. For instance, online delivery has become a must, and there is also renewed interest from policymakers in different countries on apprenticeship programs to support job recovery after the lockdown and the pandemic. In this context, I believe this program is even more critical in collecting evidence and sharing learnings across organizations delivering pre-apprenticeship program or similar bridge programs targeting young people and aiming to support them to access apprenticeship pathway. Indeed, promoting economic inclusion and access to opportunities for young people is at the core of JP Morgan corporate responsibility commitment across 37 countries globally. As part of this mission under the umbrella of the Global Initiative New Skills at Work, in 2019, JP Morgan Chase committed to invest $350 million globally over 5 years to develop, test and scale innovative efforts to prepare individuals with the skills they need to be successful in the rapidly changing economy. As such, we work with a range of different organizations across country, non-profits, training providers, business alliances, think tanks, and of course, we are honored to partner with Learning and Work Institute on this program. So making apprenticeship programs more inclusive by helping vulnerable youth to access these career pathways remains a priority. Indeed, pre-apprenticeship bridging schemes that combine work experience and vocational training are a valuable tool to prepare young people to access formal apprenticeship programs, which led to future-proof jobs. So even yesterday, in the launch of the Pact for Skills, it was clear during the European Vocational Skills Week the importance of apprenticeship programs. In fact, the Pact for Skills builds on the European Alliance for Apprenticeships, through which governments, training providers, employers, key stakeholders really work together to strengthen the quality supply of apprenticeship across Europe. So in conclusion, it is really our hope that this research program led by the Learning and Work Institute will provide actionable guidelines, a good practice needed by practitioners to design more inclusive and effective bridge programs toward apprenticeship pathways, particularly for the more vulnerable segments among young people. Thanks once again to the Learning and Work Institute for the collaboration and for giving us the opportunity to come together virtually today. And I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Louisa. That was great. And as I've said, we're really grateful to JP Morgan for the support that they've provided with this project. Could I please just remind people, if they're not speaking, if they could mute their microphones, that would be great, as we have had some background noise. Okay, so in just a moment, we'll be hearing from my colleague Shauna, who will provide a summary of the key findings of the project in terms of how pre-apprenticeships can support young people to develop key skills for employment. We'll then be hearing from Emma Alex from Catch-22. Catch-22 is a charity which, in partnership with the Children's Society, is running a program called Bright Light. Bright Light is a pre-apprenticeship targeted at young people who've been in the local authority care system, and it's based in London. So we're really pleased that Emma's able to join us to speak about that program. So firstly, to provide some background and context, in January 2020, which seems a very long time ago now, we were commissioned by JP Morgan to research and share best practice in the design and delivery of inclusive and high quality pre-apprenticeship programs for young people. The aim of the project is really to enable providers from different parts of the world to learn from best practice and to be able to apply that within their own programs. So that can be in terms of improving and developing existing pre-apprenticeships, really to ensure that they secure maximum impact for the young people who take part, or it can be in terms of developing new programs that can really help young people to overcome the barriers they face in accessing apprenticeships. So through the current project, we have identified a wide range of new examples of best practice, with a particular focus upon how providers can support young people to develop really important skills in 3 key areas. Shauna will talk about these in just a moment, but the 3 key skill areas that we're particularly interested in are the development of digital skills, the development of learn-to-learn attitudes and skills, and also the development of soft or transversal skills. Through the project, we've also explored ways in which providers have flexed the delivery of their programs in response to the coronavirus pandemic, so often through blended and online learning approaches. So the project has been up and running since January. Up until this point, we have been undertaking research to identify good practice. We've done this through desk research, through a call for evidence, telephone interviews, and in-depth online visits with 6 providers. The work has led to the development of 6 new case studies of best practice, which will be published in the next few weeks, and followed by a range of other project activity, which I'll talk about a little later. So as many of you will know, the work we're doing now very much builds upon work that we did previously, looking at effective pre-apprenticeships in Europe. I know lots of you contributed examples of good practice and also attended events and webinars that we ran towards the end of 2018. Through that initial work, we developed a series of case studies, short films, provider guides and top tip resources, all of which are available on our website, and you can see them on your screen now. These resources are still very relevant, and the current set of materials and outputs that we're developing will very much build upon and complement them. Okay, so moving on to the context, why are we doing this work? This work is really important because apprenticeships are an increasingly prominent feature of skills and employment systems in many parts of the world. They are often a route to highly valued careers with opportunities for training and progression. However, we know that take-up of apprenticeships is often not equal, with young people from the most disadvantaged backgrounds often missing out. So we know that pre-apprenticeships can provide a vital pathway to apprenticeships. They're often targeted at disadvantaged young people who really need support to overcome specific barriers to training and employment. Effective and high quality programmes can be really quite transformative in enabling young people to access opportunities that they would otherwise be excluded from. This is particularly the case right now. Even prior to the pandemic, data from different parts of the world showed that too many young people were not able to make sustained transitions into the labour market. However, more recent data shows that young people have been hit particularly hard by the global economic crisis that's been caused by the pandemic. We've seen soaring levels of youth unemployment alongside disrupted education, which is really creating a generation of young people whose transitions into the labour market are significantly affected. And whilst the pandemic, of course, has affected the majority of young people in some way, the most disadvantaged young people are certainly being pushed further away from apprenticeships and wider labour market opportunities that are available. So I think all of this really reinforces the importance of effective, high quality and inclusive pre-apprenticeships that provide opportunities for the most disadvantaged young people. The work that we have undertaken has shown that providers in different parts of the world deliver pre-apprenticeships in very different and creative ways. We think this project is great to share that learning really widely and to enable providers to apply lessons about what works within their own unique context. So I'm now going to hand over to Shauna, who's going to speak about some of the key findings from the project to date, if that's okay, Shauna.
Yeah, absolutely. Just going to check. Yeah, perfect. So hi everyone. Thank you all so much for joining the webinar today. It's really great to have so many of you here. And so my name is Shauna. I work as a researcher here at Learning and Work, and I've been involved in conducting research as part of our pre-apprenticeships work with the support of JP Morgan over the last couple of years. So this month, we've put together a report which provides an overview of key findings about effective practice in pre-apprenticeship programmes. It draws upon case studies of good practice, which will be published later alongside a new set of resources for providers. So I look forward to sharing all of those materials with you. But for now, I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes just providing an overview of these findings with a focus on our key priority areas. Which are the development of digital skills, transversal skills, and blended learning as well. So as I said, this year we undertook a range of research activity to examine pre-apprenticeship programmes across different countries. So this has included scoping research comprised of desk research and an online call for evidence, whereby we identified 45 pre-apprenticeship programmes, which builds upon previous work which we've done. So we're now at a network of over 100 organisations. So I do look forward to sharing that report for you, but I'll just move on now. We have identified 6 organisations who we considered to be delivering unique or innovative practice for groups of young people who are disadvantaged in the labour market. So we conducted online deep dive study visits with each of these organisations, and this included a document review and qualitative interviews with key stakeholders, delivery staff, employers and young people. The case study organisations include the Bright Light programme in London in England, which Emma will talk about a bit later. We studied the Formari programme in Brazil, in Latin America, so we have some representatives here today. We also studied the Invest 2 programme in Ireland, the multi-industry pilot in Australia, the integration pre-apprenticeship for refugees in Switzerland, as well as the second technology opportunity school in Spain. So we've developed written case studies about each of these programmes, which offer practical examples and guidance on how they've actually designed their programme to meet the needs of the young people that they're working with, and to support them to develop skills and qualities to enter into high quality apprenticeships. So pre-apprenticeship programmes are mostly targeted at young people who are unemployed, have low skill levels, and they often face multiple barriers to employment. Some are targeted at young people who are very distant from the labour market, and so these programmes typically provide intensive one-to-one support and activities, with careful sequencing to kind of build engagement and confidence over a sustained period of time. And other programmes are aimed at young people who are closer to the labour market, who require specific support to address skills gaps. So for example, to build their confidence in actually engaging with employers, or to improve their literacy or numeracy skills. And I just wanted to highlight that the research we've undertaken this year has really highlighted the programmes are becoming more and more targeted at specific groups of young people, such as care leavers or refugees, in comparison to previous years. So our first area of focus is looking at how pre-apprenticeship programmes actually support young people to develop digital skills. And as we've said, digital skills for young people has never been more important. The pandemic has really shed light on the disadvantage that young people can face if they do have a basic digital skills need, combined with kind of digital exclusion, such as not having access to internet or technology. So our research has shown that some programmes are really aimed at supporting young people to progress into an apprenticeship in an IT or technology-based sector, and therefore digital skills development is a core aim of that programme. But more commonly, programmes support young people to develop basic digital skills alongside kind of basic literacy skills or employability skills, and they embed digital skills learning throughout the programme. So providers can take different approaches to this. So for example, digital skills can be developed as part of wider employability training. For example, encouraging young people to use Microsoft Word or similar packages to develop CVs and cover letters, or using online databases to search for apprenticeships or jobs. Other programmes host specific digital skills workshops, so either in-house as part of their programme or through working with partners. And other programmes develop digital skills alongside other learning, as I've mentioned already, and by really creatively embedding these within the programme. So I thought I would share an example to bring those findings to light a little bit. There's a lot of text here, but I hope that that will be useful when we come to share the presentation after the webinar. So the second Technology Opportunity School, STOS, aims to improve access to training and employment for young people who are socially excluded or at risk of social exclusion in Madrid. So they recognise the increasing importance of technology for apprenticeships in society in general. So they try to use technology as a tool for real social change, through which young people develop key personal and social skills, as well as the skills needed to access the labour market. So the development of digital skills is integrated with the development of transversal skills. And this really helps young people to understand the relevance and the real life value of these. So they host workshops such as Video Game Space, where they use gaming as a vehicle to work on personal and social skills, such as teamwork and communication. And what's really interesting is that as part of their focus on addressing the digital gender gap, young women are encouraged to participate in the programme by creating avatars in the game and using their own personal image. For example, a female superhero with a range of powers. So that's just one example of how programmes can be quite creative in using using technology to increase digital skills, but also to kind of really engage young people in that learning. So our research has also focused in on how programmes can support young people to develop key basic skills of literacy and numeracy. So research shows that literacy and numeracy are key factors in an individual's life chances, and a basic level of these skills is an essential foundation for access to apprenticeships and the labour market, but in society in general. And we found that providers tell us that young people on pre-apprenticeship programmes will have lower levels of literacy and numeracy than their peers. So good quality support to develop a basic level of these skills is vital for young people's progression into apprenticeships or employment. And we also found that on some programmes, especially those with a focus on supporting refugees, foreign language skills can also be very important in basic skills development. So we've gathered many examples of how programmes actually do this in practice. And from that, a number of key principles have emerged. So basic skills provision is most effective where links are made between literacy and numeracy and young people's interests, as well as the kind of sector and employment goals that they have. So for example, by combining vocational content with literacy and numeracy, learners can understand how these skills are relevant to the workplace, and they might be more likely to engage in that learning. So for example, in construction, throughout their vocational learning. And basic skills can also be embedded throughout wider employability content. For example, by encouraging young people to think about literacy, such as grammar, when developing their CV or preparing for mock interviews with employers. So in summary, developing basic skills in flexible and creative ways will help make learning relevant to young people's lives and to their employment goals. And this is really important for kind of increasing confidence for young people with lower levels of literacy and numeracy who may not have engaged with that learning well in compulsory schooling, for example. So this programme is a great example of how programmes can support young people to really progress their basic skills before they enter into an apprenticeship. So the integration pre-apprenticeship in Switzerland aims to provide young refugees with the necessary basic skills, including sector-specific training in the host country language, as well as literacy and numeracy skills. Participants are supported to develop these skills in a really practical and contextualised way throughout the programme. So it's an intensive element of the programme where particular attention is paid to the vocabulary and grammar that would be used in their chosen sector, such as hospitality. And this helps to ensure that the young people can effectively and confidently communicate with colleagues and others in the workplace once they enter into their work placement and later their apprenticeship. Language learning is seen as essential for increasing their resilience and also for providing them with an opportunity to better integrate in the society that they've come to. So yeah, it really helps them to develop social networks and kind of familiarity with the education system and the labour market. So moving on, we've spent a substantial amount of time learning about how programmes can support young people to develop transversal, also known as soft or transferable skills, to enable young people to adapt within their chosen sector and their career. So these are the skills that are extremely valuable because they can be transferred to almost every industry. And it also supports young people to develop skills that are required to adapt in a constantly changing labour market, which is ever more important now. So these are skills such as communication, teamwork, problem solving, learning, planning, and so on. So research undertaken as part of this work has identified a range of guiding principles and strategies that enable effective transversal skills development amongst young people in pre-apprenticeship programmes. Overall, we found that pre-apprenticeship programmes are extremely well placed to support young people to develop these skills. And one of the main ways in which programmes do this is through experiential learning, so learning through experience. So I've got a number of examples here. So project-based learning is a method of teaching which facilitates cooperative project-based learning amongst young people. And this is really an effective way of developing a range of transversal skills, including especially social skills, communication and teamwork. The work-based learning nature of all pre-apprenticeships means that they are well placed to provide young people with these opportunities as well. So that's the on-the-job experiences that pre-apprenticeships provide, such as work placements and engagement with employers. And this really helps young people to develop sector-specific transferable skills as well. Taking a phased approach to the design of programmes offers young people ways to learn for work by providing technical and transversal skills development before entering the workplace, and then to learn from work by providing opportunity to build on these in the workplace. So Invest2 provides a really good example of this. This was a pilot pre-apprenticeship in Ireland, which through studying shared some key learning about their experience. So during the pilot programme, the first group of learners found the transferable skills sessions a bit challenging, as they felt the delivery method was a bit more rooted in kind of psychological practices rather than a world of work approach. So based on this feedback, for subsequent programmes, they decided to embed transversal skills development within ICT lessons so that they would be a bit more contextualised for the tech sector environment. So for example, they realised the importance of effective communication with colleagues if undertaking an IT support role. So another really interesting area which we've been looking closely at is the concept of learn-to-learn skills or attitudes. So this concept is closely linked to transversal skills, and it involves supporting young people to develop the skills and qualities required to adapt to a constantly changing labour market. It's a really important topic area for pre-apprenticeship programmes, given that many young people will have left school early, they may have had negative learning experiences. And on programmes like this, Learning to Learn is about helping young people to reintegrate into the learning environment and increase their confidence. So programmes by offering high quality mentoring and other forms of support. On phase learning, in which the first phase or two is really focused on building positive relationships with young people and by giving them community projects to boost their morale. I'm just going to pause for a second. Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. I'll move on and just share an example of how a programme supports young people to develop learn-to-learn skills. So the Second Chance School in Savoie in France, they were a case study last year, but they show how programmes can adopt phased approaches to support young people to adopt learn-to-learn skills or qualities. So the programme itself is made up of 3 phases, and this is designed to help young people become more confident and skilled and more clear about their career aspirations as they progress through the programme. The phased approach helps young people to gradually develop the soft skills required, and it also focuses on reintroducing learners into an education environment following a period of time outside of the education system. So it really helps young people to rediscover a positive view of education and work, and and that's what we considered effective practice for that case study. So I'm going to move on quickly and finish by sharing some learning about blended learning on pre-apprenticeship programmes. So I'm sure we all know that blended learning is a mode of delivery where learners benefit from a combination of teaching in a digital environment as well as face-to-face learning. There are many benefits associated with blended learning. For example, young people can learn independently within their own timeframes, but also in combination with engagement with staff and other learners that kind of face-to-face contact can bring. Providers across the world, as we all know, have had to adapt their provision as a result of the recent or not so recent pandemic now. And this has shed light on a number of key principles and effective practice in delivering online learning in pre-apprenticeship programmes. So providers have adapted to online delivery by using a range of online platforms to communicate with young people. So we've all been using Teams and Zoom and many other platforms, but some providers have also been using kind of smartphone applications, interactive online games and social media platforms to facilitate engagement. Engagement has been really important over the past few months, so we found that's how providers have been doing that. Organisations who are now delivering online have had to be quite creative in developing new ways of supporting young people through their learning. So young people who are learning remotely have had access to dedicated and regular tutor support and peer support. And I'll just finish by mentioning some other elements of good practice in the online learning environment. Some organisations their pre-apprenticeship programme amongst young people. So I'll finish there because I think I've gone over time a little bit. So I'll hand back to Nicola, if that's all right.
That's great. Thank you, Shauna, and lots of really interesting information there, which will be drawn out in the case studies and wider resources that we'll be publishing shortly. So please look out for those. I think one of the key points to make is that for many young people, transitions into the labour market can be insecure and disjointed. It's not unusual for young people to regularly move in and out of unstable, low paid, low skilled employment, interspersed with periods of claiming welfare support and also working in the informal labour market. This is where effective pre-apprenticeship programmes can really make a difference. High quality and targeted programmes that really support young people to develop some of the core skills that Shauna has just spoken about can really enable them to break that cycle of unemployment and precarious employment and really build sustainable and rewarding careers. Okay, I'm now going to hand over to Emma Alex from Catch 22. As I mentioned at the start, Emma runs the Bright Light programme in London, and we're really pleased to have Emma with us today. So over to you, Emma, if that's okay.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here this afternoon. It's great to be able to tell you guys a bit more about the Bright Light programme. But I thought I'd start off with, I'm not sure if everyone joining you aware of who Catch 22 are. So there's a couple of slides just about Catch 22. So we're a social business. We have been operating for over 200 years now, and we deliver many services in the welfare cycle, from cradle to career, essentially. We have over 1,600 staff supporting over 110,000 people to lead better lives, and those statistics were taken in 2019-20. We have three areas that we really believe that people need to thrive. So our 3 Ps, we look at ensuring that there's good people around us and around our service users, that everybody has a purpose and everybody has a good place, whether it be a place to live, place to work, place to study. Next slide, please. So the areas that we focus on, we run programmes in our justice and rehabilitation This is probably we're probably best known for. We've been doing this type of work for a very long time: offender management, violence reduction, interventions, rehabilitation and victim services. We then run services within education, so we provide alternative provisions for schools for pupils outside of mainstream education. So there's lots and lots of work that goes into that, and it kind of feeds into many of our other services. We have our National Citizen Service as well. This is a 4-phased programme giving young people the opportunity to meet new friends, learn new skills and make a difference with their community. This has changed somewhat with COVID, given that the development of this, the delivery of this is generally thousands of children together for a summer camp. So some of that delivery has now changed somewhat. Next slide, please. And we then also deliver services for young people and families, including child sexual and criminal exploitation services, mental health support and family intervention services. And the other strand is employability and vocational training. I'm one of the operations managers that sits within employability. And across this division, we run various programs, including apprenticeship programs, and training for young people, such as our study programme. Next slide, please. So with employability, the division I sit within, our aims are to improve social mobility through supporting young people from 16 years up, no upper limit on that age group, and we seek to address barriers to employment. So working with neat young people, people that may have mental health or physical health issues, care leavers, ex-offenders, and generally, touching anyone that has low confidence in employability. We offer bespoke, could you go back a slide, Shona? Thank you. We offer bespoke action plans, community-based model across all of our programs. And of course, as highlighted through COVID, the community-based model is something that we hope to get back to. At the moment, everything is running remotely. We look at work experience opportunities, we provide employment advice, benefits advice, training, courses, employability skills, job brokering, and of course in-work support. The contracts that we deliver on, this has probably changed somewhat since this slide, but we run a few programs that are corporate funded through Barclays Academic Work Programme, the Social Switch Project, which is sponsored by Google. We also have Digital Ed, sponsored by Microsoft. Inspiring Families is a DWP contract. We also have a new programme called JETS, which is a DWP contract. And finally, Bright Light, which is what I'm here to speak to you about. Next slide, please. So Bright Light, what is Bright Light? It's a pilot programme. It's a partnership programme being delivered by Catch-22 and the Children's Society. The main aim of the programme is to progress care leavers into apprenticeship and understand the barriers associated with this to develop solutions, share learnings and influence national policy. So over 2.5 years, we aim to move 40 care leavers into apprenticeships and 40 care leavers either into employment, educational training opportunities, and then to positively impact on a further 80 care leavers. The quality of service, in order to ensure that we can deliver intense support and we adopt a localised approach with employers, and have limited our referrals to a small number of care leaving teams. We think it's this key to make sure that the service that we do deliver very much is intense for those young people, and then we're not spreading ourselves too thin. Next slide, please. So as a partnership, as I've mentioned, Catch-22, we've been around for 200 years, and we follow our vision around the 3 Ps. We are an award-winning employability provider, and we have around a 70% sustainability rate, which is really good within employability, thinking about all the target groups that we work with to get them to sustain into employment. The Children's Society, they've been established for a very long time too, over 130 years. They're well known for fighting for change for disadvantaged young people through direct practice, lobbying and campaigning. They supported 9,872 vulnerable young people last year while policying for change. So together we've got over 1,800 professionals in our networks operating from 144 locations across the UK, working to support 51,000 young people every year. I say young people, I mean people. Next slide, please. So this is us, this is the Bright Light team, best team in the world, I have to say. So there's myself, the operations manager, heading up Bright Light. We then have Alison, who's our partnership development manager, and I'll tell you a little bit about her roles as we move forward. And then we have the 3 career coaches, Carl, Maggie and Victoria, who work with our young people to help them move forward and progress. Next slide, please. So Bright Light. It's an employability programme purely for care leavers, funded by the Clothworkers Foundation. So our strategy really was bringing 2 big giants together to progress care leavers into sustainable careers via apprenticeship training and sector-specific routeways. And our expertise we have around working with care leavers helps us access opportunities, build confidence and overcome barriers. And we look to provide wraparound support in what I say our in-house is Children's Society's in-house therapeutic services. So this is a disruption exploitation programme, which is on offer to all of our young people on the Bright Light programme too. The criteria, we work with young people aged 16 to 25 who are leaving, who have left care, and we look for them to be willing and ready, able to start work or an apprenticeship within 12 months. So just a bit of an overview of the delivery model. We look to onboard young people, and for me it's key that we have that relationship with the local authorities. So the referral comes directly from their PA or the social worker, along with a summary of their pathway plan, so we can fully understand the constraints and barriers that these young people may have faced or still facing. We look to build rapport and build confidence, identify goals and barriers to build a bespoke action plan. Whilst on programme, we'll be signposting and making referrals to wraparound support. We run a work style, which is a soft skills measure to look at key elements around motivation, confidence, application, interview skills, all of the sort of employability skills any person would need to progress into their next opportunity. We also have a partnership development manager who brokers opportunities purely for our caseload. And then we have tailored employability upskilling, so obviously the basic stuff around sort of CVs, cover letters, disclosures, application interview skills and mock interviews too. And then as we progress, we look at running better off calculations and offering financial support, travel training, set good understandings around employers' expectations. And then ongoing, we offer in-work or in-training support moving forward. Next slide, please. So why was Bright Light needed? So these statistics were taken back in 2019, 2020. Home to a Good Statistics report showed that care leavers are 3 times more likely to be NEET than non-care leavers. Care leavers make up almost half of men aged 21 in contact with the criminal justice system. There are currently 99,000 children who are classified as looked after or away from home. 8,600 young people leave the care system every year. Just 6% of care leavers aged 19 to 20 go on to higher education, and care leavers make up to 25% of the UK's homeless population. So as you can see, as a target market, care leavers are disadvantaged and certainly do need additional support. Next slide, please. So what makes Bright Light unique? So I mentioned our exclusive partnership development manager, Alison. For me, this is a real key selling point of the programme and very much needed for a project like this. So Alison's role, it looks at building and brokering opportunities solely for care leavers in accordance to sectors of interest. Alison really gets to know the caseload. She works directly with the career coaches and the caseloads to understand the needs, their interests, so that we can broker the right opportunities. Supporting and motivating the employers to meet their CSR targets. So that's huge conversations that Alison has when she's talking to employers to see how we can support them with those, but also educate them around the needs of care leavers, but also celebrating the benefits of recruiting a care leaver. Care leavers quite often will have lower education attainment, and that's not necessarily through capability, but because of circumstances that they have faced, or trauma, or moving around, or the lack of opportunity that presents them. So when we're speaking to employers, although a young person may not have the grades, we like to demonstrate that they have other skills, resilience, and the abilities. So we try to set up ways of working with the employer to demonstrate those abilities. So working with employers, we also look for them to make their opportunities more accessible, so reducing the application process. What we have found, particularly during COVID, that our young people have been disadvantaged. There's a lot of digital poverty. So we have worked really closely with employers to try and take out elements of the application process to make it more accessible. Providing support throughout the whole recruitment process. And this can take a very long time. I've got many examples where we've worked with an employer and it's taken maybe 3 to 4 months in getting that recruitment process working. So there's a lot of support needed from that employment development manager. And what you would probably find traditionally across an employability program, that you would have someone in employer engagement sitting maybe across 10 advisors, maybe 12. And this is just across 3 career coaches in 3 localised areas. So we provide support throughout the whole recruitment process, assisting with any training needs, screening and job matching for the employer. Additional support for the participants during the recruitment process, obviously prepping them and looking at potential work trials to get the experience they need whilst applying for those opportunities. We've had tailored jobs fairs that we've delivered that have been purely for care leavers, working with employers to open up opportunities exclusive to Bright Light 2, but also to broaden the career options and mindsets of young people. Quite often they're not aware of the different types of jobs out there and the opportunities available to them. And as I mentioned earlier, we obviously offer in-work support up to 18 months, both for the care leaver and the employer alike, addressing any challenges and supporting and stepping in where needed. Next slide, please. So what else makes us unique? Absolutely having a flexible approach is key. Care leavers have been involved in the service design. So from the very beginning, they even named the programme. At every stage where we have put together the design, and if we're making changes, we turn to our young people for their support and their advice around how best to do that. We listen to ensure that care leavers are at the heart of the programme. We launched our expert youth panel so that we have young people that we can turn to at any point, and as I mentioned earlier, to get them involved and draw on their ideas and have their voices heard. We have ongoing surveys, both with employers and care leavers, to evaluate the learnings of the programme and the effectiveness of that. We have dedicated career coaches embedded in the local authorities. So our 3 main areas currently are Hounslow, Emsfield and Wandsworth. We do also work with Tower Hamlets, Newham and Camden, and we are in conversations with Brent currently. But I guess it's really important, as I mentioned earlier, that we don't spread ourselves too thinly. It's ideal that the career coach is embedded within the local authorities so we can work in partnership with those local authorities, that we understand the labour market within those locations. Those young people live really, really well. So for me, having 3 main areas is key, but we have a couple of others that feed into us. We coordinate the needs of the care leavers where there are other key workers involved. As mentioned earlier, we look at all the wraparound services, addressing barriers to provide extra support where needed, researching and accessing education and training courses and work experience. Again, this is in accordance to that young person's passions and career motivations. Tailoring support and coaching to see through the application process, ensuring care leavers have the skills and confidence required to apply and start work or education. We have live opportunities regularly through the partnership development manager. As mentioned earlier, she works directly with those young people, and we're very flexible in ensuring that both the career coach and the partnership development manager are on hand as things change for those young people. And of course, the financial support around travel, clothing and other expenses related to starting their opportunities. Next slide, please. So what have we achieved so far? So I guess it's probably quite important to say that we launched this programme back in September of 2019, so we've been running for just over a year. Within the first quarter, we'd engaged with quite a few young people and started to build our opportunities up, our pipeline of opportunities with businesses. Alison started in the role in January, and then by March, obviously, we've gone into lockdown. So it's been quite challenging because the vast majority of this programme's time has been within lockdown restrictions and been affected by COVID-19. Even so, we've consulted with over 100 businesses, many of them have positively engaged, offering apprenticeships, employment, work experience, traineeships, and training opportunities to our care leavers. We launched the Expert Youth Panel to ensure our care leavers' voices are heard and that have their input on our delivery throughout. We've signed up over 120 care leavers onto the programme. We've delivered 2 jobs fair purely for care leavers during lockdown. Great feedback that we've had from both the employers and young people alike, which is fantastic. Engagement with care leavers on the Bright Light programme has been higher than any of our other employability contracts. So I think that really goes to highlight that intense working with our young people and the relationships that the career coaches have built with them. And we've progressed 32 young people into opportunities, with an additional 4 starting apprenticeships in December, which is super exciting. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to finish, I guess, with a few of our learnings and challenges so far. So these are sort of the headlines, I guess. Digital exclusion has been quite a big impact on the programme. So as you'll be aware, on the 19th of April, Education Secretary announced that vulnerable and disadvantaged young people across the country would receive free digital equipment to enhance their online learning. Whilst this has been a positive step, the reality is that equipment's not reached all of the care leavers, certainly not all of ours on the programme. Such as those that are not in education training. So what we found is if somebody, a care leaver was neat, they wasn't necessarily prioritised for that equipment. As a result, many of our young people continue to face digital poverty and therefore disadvantaged young people in completing online applications, etc. We've also found that we have had higher rates of young people falling out of opportunities. So 50% of our young people that started their in work, and that's not 50 of the 32, that's 50 of previous figures. So it's probably about 10 young people in total that have fallen out of their work training, is due a direct result of COVID-19. This is due to businesses closing, furlough not being applied for, or training and education courses, particularly at the beginning of the pandemic, being put on hold or cancelled to further notice. Our teams, of course, are working tirelessly to try and find alternative options for our young people. As restrictions did lift, of course, we're in lockdown again, so it's a very interesting time. We've also seen a decline in opportunities as well. So due to the pandemic, we've seen a huge fall in apprenticeships. This will also have implication of future jobs as we emerge from the pandemic. With there being an increased competition for jobs, as we know, unemployment is rising, therefore our care leavers have a higher level of competition for each job that they go for. Young people in the programme have told us that the majority of concerns that they have about future job goals and what the job market might look for them. It's crucial going forward that there's an emphasis on employer engagement in programmes such as Bright Light to secure long-term opportunities for young people. So, I mean, you know, this is a challenge, and it's a challenge that we face every day. We are very fortunate that we've built some very good relationships with employers, and we are now starting to see new opportunities coming through, both apprenticeships and employment opportunities, which is fantastic. We've also done a bit of work directly with local authorities around ring fencing apprenticeships within local authority services, and the 4 young people that are progressing into apprenticeships in December are all within local authorities, which is great. Flexible delivery. So I know, Shona, you touched on this, and of course throughout the programme and quite quickly into mobilising the programme, we had to look at changing our delivery model somewhat. So we've been doing lots of stuff remotely and doing that digitally and through video calls and online platforms. I think we will need to continue doing this moving forward. I think it's really important that we do have a blended model moving into coming out the other side of the pandemic. So care leavers on the programme enjoyed more informal catch-ups delivered through virtual video calls. We will continue this regularly between care leavers and their career coaches. We're aware that video calls are increasingly popular amongst employers and interviews and selection process. Offering some virtual programme engagement to allow care leavers to become more familiar with using this is a must, and this is something we will continue to do. Thank you. I think I'm probably about on time. Yeah, I'll hand back to you guys. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks very much, Emma. A really, really interesting presentation and a great example actually of how pre-apprenticeships are addressing the needs of a very targeted group of young people who clearly face huge challenges in terms of entering the labour market. I think, you know, so much to say about your programme, but it very much strikes me that there are three particular aspects of it that are particularly important. So the partnership working in terms of the relationships with employers and the local authority appears to be crucial. Particularly in terms of that wraparound support for young people through their personal advisors. Flexibility in responding to needs, as we know, yes, care leavers as a group have some common experiences, but actually they're all different. They have different barriers to employment, so being able to respond flexibly is crucial. And also I think the point around understanding local labour markets is crucial, as well as, you know, ultimately young people engage in pre-apprenticeship because they want to progress into work, into apprenticeships, into jobs, so those real opportunities need to be available. So thank you, Emma, that was brilliant. There were a couple of questions and comments on the chat, particularly around online learning and concern about the decline in the number of apprenticeships available, but I think you actually touched on those quite well in your last couple of slides. We don't quite have time now to have any particular discussion as we are reaching the end of the webinar. So I'll just move on to the next steps in terms of upcoming activities. So over the next few weeks and months, we'll be finalising and launching the 6 case studies of good practice that we've spoken about today, including the Bright Light programme. Alongside a practical resource which will be aimed at providers. We'll be launching these through another webinar shortly, so please look out for that and do join us. In the new year, we'll also be launching quite an exciting programme of peer learning activity involving some of the providers who have shared examples of good practice so far, but we'll also be recruiting new providers to take part in that activity. So again, please look out for that too. And finally, we'll be running a programme of knowledge exchange events and focus webinars throughout 2021, alongside producing films and other resources. So there really are lots of opportunities for people to get involved in this work, to share their experiences and to showcase good practice, and in particular to engage with other providers from different parts of Europe and other parts of the world. So we will keep you informed about future developments and very much hope to see you at our next webinar. So in the meantime, a big thank you to everybody for joining us today, and a particular thank you to our speakers, Louisa, Shauna and Emma. On the screen now you can see our website address and also Shauna's contact details, so please get in touch if you'd like to share your own experiences. And as I said at the start of the webinar, we will be sharing the recording and the slides from today alongside the chat. So thank you everybody for joining us.